Thank you everyone so much for joining us in our webinar this afternoon. We have a pretty action-packed agenda, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Quick note, this webinar is being recorded, so you are welcome to share it with others, and it will be shared out with a number of our partners who are not able to join us live. So welcome to Leveraging Student Employees to Bolster Your Mentorship Program. A few quick technical items before we jump into our content today. We are in an open Zoom room. Your audio is on mute by default, but we will have a Q&A portion in the session, and you are welcome to use the raise hand feature to ask a question out loud if you would like at that time. Right now, though, we do have the chat open, and that is your forum for asking questions and introducing yourself. So Mackenzie is going to drop, my colleague Mackenzie here is going to drop a quick chat to say, please introduce yourselves. Tell others who are here who you are, where you're from, maybe a little bit about your experience with Mentor Collective. Are you a new partner? Have you been working with your mentorship program for a while? This is a great opportunity for folks to network and identify others that they might want to connect with between or around our partner education events. I do recommend for you to enjoy this webinar the most today that you use the speaker view of Zoom. The three little buttons on the top right of your own screen allow you to switch to speaker view. This will ensure that when we have a guest speaker speaking, that you're able to see their frame in addition to, or able to focus on that instead of everyone who's in the room, because we have quite a few wonderful guests today. I'm going to start out by introducing myself as all of you are introducing yourselves in chat. My name is Anna Meek. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Vice President of Partner Success here at Mentor Collective. I have been here for about a year and a half, but I've spent my entire career in higher education and educational technology. I am a student success focused data geek is the way I usually describe my background. I have my graduate work in higher education development, student development, and started my career as an advisor before falling in love with data and the opportunity it had to transform student success outcomes. And I am joined here by a wonderful team member, Jess Kitt. Jess, would you like to say hello?
Absolutely. Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jess Kitt, and I'm our Director of Partner Success here at Mentor Collective. And so what that means is if you definitely do work with a Partner Success Manager, some of them may even be in our chat today. I have the pleasure of supervising them and supporting them as their people leader. So I worked in higher education for about 10 years previously, and I'm coming to Mentor Collective about 3 or 4 months ago, hoping to make sure that you all continue to get as many resources and support and guidance and strategy as possible with some of the current opportunities and challenges in higher education. So excited to be here today, as well as with some of our wonderful partners who will be presenting.
All right, and I'm going to kick us off with our agenda. Today in our session, we're going to start by briefly speaking about essentially why we chose to offer this education webinar today, which is the benefit and rationale or opportunities to leverage student employment and mentorship together, two fantastic high impact practices. And then we will go through frameworks for implementing this by featuring 4 different partner stories. Within that, we have most of those folks who are live here today, and one that will be sharing asynchronously. So you'll get to meet our guest speakers very soon. And then finally, I'm going to wrap up with some very practical takeaways and tips for success. We have a number of tools that we have built or compiled from examples across member institutions, so that if there is a practice that you heard today that you would like to apply at your institution, there should be a tool to help you do so. So those will be shared at the end of our time and then also in our follow-up email resources. So everything we're sharing today will be linked and available to you. All right, so just to get us started, Jess, would you like to tell a little bit preview about who is joining us today from these wonderful institutions?
Absolutely. So first off, in a few minutes, we'll have Brooke Sokoloff-Adams, who works at Holyoke Community College as their Director of Student Development. Brooke will be speaking about their Student Success and Student Ambassador program, which has been a really exciting opportunity for you all to hear how a program has evolved over the course of 3 years and how they leverage student employees, of course, to support their mentees on campus. Zach Helsper will be next from California State University Northridge. Zach serves as the Senior Strategist for Equity Initiatives on campus. And Zach is also going to be sharing both the practice of making sure that a program continues to change over the course of time, and also how things can be improved by partnering with other departments on campus who also may have their own peer mentoring programs. So if you are not the only peer mentoring program at your institution and you're wondering how to connect with others, Zach is going to have some wonderful expertise and knowledge to share with you. We have Daisy Moore also here from California State University, Monterey Bay for Otter Collective. Daisy's going to be talking about how really her mentors also serve as a place where they not only, of course, support their mentees, but also support Daisy in some of the marketing that they are doing, as well as some of the day-to-day management of the mentorship program to support Daisy in all of the things that she does. We all have other duties as assigned. And then lastly, Checo Kalangao is not going to be able to be here today, but he is an associate dean for graduate studies at Georgia Southern University and actually was one of the initial faculty members standing up their student employment program. So I'm going to share on his behalf some of the ways that graduate students support other graduate students in their peer mentoring program on campus.
Very excited to hear from all of you. Thank you again for joining us, to our wonderful guests. All right, so quick poll to get us started. So for those of you who are joining us live today, quick yes, no question. Do you already have student employees somehow part of your mentorship initiative? Yes, no, or no, but I'm interested in starting. And we're going to share these results. So if you respond briefly, we'll share it back. You can kind of get a sense of what this looks like at other partners. You can probably imagine, since we're talking about this, that we have been seeing this trend a little bit within our partner institutions and lots of folks looking to learn from each other, which is why we're featuring some of these stories today. Certainly those presenting are not the only ones who leverage student employees as part of mentorship. If you are here because you are doing so, we'd love to be able to add your examples to some of our resources as well. All right, Mackenzie, would you like to share the results? Great. Okay, just over half of folks are currently doing this today, so hopefully you can hear some tweaks or small opportunities for improvement in our stories, and others who haven't done this yet. And what I'd say is best thing about higher education is how open and transparent we all are with each other to learn from those who have done this before and get a little bit of a head start. So hopefully that is your takeaway today. Now, I want to start just with a framing of student employment in general. Whether your student employees are working on your mentorship programs or anything else, there are quite a lot of benefits to the institution and the student. There is a wealth of research that shows that students who are working as on-campus employees certainly have greater financial security. And I think an element of this is not just the pay, but the security of the pay, the commitment to the ability to have an employment for a long period of time, for the fact that that employment will fit into their work schedule, that they will not need to sacrifice getting hours for being able to go to class and so on, but also with improved learning outcomes, improved career readiness, and increased persistence. There's a lot of great data and evidence around here to say that this is a worthwhile use of our time. And then for the institution, the increased capacity in terms of offering what we do. And then for those of you who've done this, you talk at length about feeling closer to the student experience in your offices, having that additional perspective and feeling that personal sense of fulfillment of the mission as you see the learners that you are serving also working with you and doing your work. So I hope that we'll hear some of that benefit as well today. But this requires us to do it well, not just to offer it in general. As you can see here, it is not just a paycheck. And so a lot of what we're going to share today is the type of experiences that student employees are given and the richness of that when the student employment they are offered is either to serve as a mentor or to serve mentees and mentors as well. There are two ways that we've heard from these examples that folks are leveraging student employees. The first, and some of you may have heard this quite at length already, is the idea of paying mentors, creating paid positions for mentors. We have lots of great examples to go into detail on this. And the second is to provide support for your mentorship program. We've seen an increase in this as many of you are constrained on resources, but still have really grand goals for your programs and your students, and you don't want to sacrifice achievement for time. And so we're going to focus quite a bit today on lifting up some of those examples as well. Before we dig into them, these are the three things we've seen as benefits for institutions who use paid mentor models, if you're thinking about that. The first is increased mentor capacity. Typically, paid mentors are, because they are given a certain amount of hours a week to participate in mentorship, will support more mentees. So this is a great solution if you are looking to offer more mentorship to more students. It also provides for more structure around mentorship expectations. This could be things like meeting with a student within their first month of school. It could be having certain types of conversations at different times of year. It could be providing additional layers of training and coaching to mentors that might go a little bit above and beyond what we're able to ask of volunteers in a position. And this goes for both programs that serve incoming students as well as something like a upper class or career-based program or graduate programs. And then finally, tech-enabled insights. A large advantage of the Mentor Collective platform is all the data that you can gather, and the mentors themselves are a huge source of that information. So from things like conversation logs to flags to getting students to respond to assessments, if you're able to say things like, as a paid mentor, we'd like you to reach out to each of your mentees to encourage them to take the assessment. We do see those types of tactics result in greater influx of data into your student success insights and platform. Now, I don't think we have to tell too many folks on the value to you, but I also want to remind you that peer mentoring, the act of being a mentor, in addition to student employment being valuable, there's a good wealth of evidence that speaks to the skills that mentors themselves develop. So one, mentors themselves, and this is just one citation from a very recent study, although there are many behind this that this is based on. Student achievement outcomes obviously exist for mentees, but they also exist for mentors. Mentors are most likely to have higher GPAs and greater one-year persistence. But the mentors also have increased academic self-efficacy. Well, no surprise. If you're the one helping someone find resources, you are aware of the resources. Maybe you're using them yourself. Improved communication, leadership, interpersonal skills, and strength and networking. And a lot of these sound like what I hope many of you are familiar with as employability skills, postgraduate competencies. This is just one framework example from the National Association of Colleges Employers, known as the NACE competencies. So top 10 employability skills based on a reverse assessment of what employers are looking for. And so we see things like communication, teamwork, technology, professional development, professionalism, I mean, in that list of skills. And so when we think about the fact that if you develop these as a mentor, it's very appropriate to consider that a job where you can develop employability skills. I'm going to refer back to these competencies when we wrap up as well. Now, before we get into our first guest, I also want to point out some of the specific program support ways that we have heard and listened to our partners in. Program administration, so there are examples of student employees who are doing administrative tasks, so like lifting the weight for those of you who either have a staff transition or need a little bit more help during peak times of year. And this could be incoming alerts, streamlining operational things, giving you more time to leverage the data and less time to do the day-to-day. Promotion and outreach and event coordination are two really key areas as well. Students are wonderful at knowing what other students will respond to, and peer-to-peer influencing is such a wonderful mechanism. So this could be designing promotional materials, could be hosting and planning events, for your mentees and your mentors. If your mentors are alumni and industry folks, they love engaging with students. So this is great, an opportunity here. And if your mentees or mentors are current students, this is another great opportunity. And then also engaging with participants as a whole and also providing support to other mentors. We're going to hear a lot about this in a couple of our examples today about how student employees are coaching mentors as well. So with that being said, I'm going to let Jess introduce our first guest.
Wonderful. Well, without further ado, I'm going to reintroduce Brooke Sokolov-Adams, who works at Holyoke Community College as their Director of Student Development. Brooke, I want to make sure I got your title right. And Brooke is going to be talking a little bit about their Success Ambassadors and Scholar programs, some of the importance around language. So Brooke, thank you so much for joining us today and for all of your expertise that you'll share with the community. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. You got it all perfect. I was listening to Annemiek speak, and I wish I had the entire time because every point is so important, and I have so many anecdotes. So I'm going to talk fast because I was raised in the South. I've got some good Midwestern roots, and I now live in the East. So hang on. And if you have questions, you can reach out to me afterwards. I'm older, and so I prefer phone communication. You can call me anytime, but also if you want to email me, I did just put it in the chat a little bit earlier. So allow me to introduce my program. I started at Holyoke Community College in the spring of 22, and they said, orientation for your mentors is in 3 days. Good luck. And so we have really built this program, my staff and I together, since I got here. And it is so exciting to share it with you. So we are called the Student Ambassador Mentorship Program. We serve women, non-binary, and transgender students who fall within categories that are mandated by our funder, so the state of Massachusetts. So we serve students who are first in their family to attend college, low-income individuals, individuals with disabilities, LGBTQ folks, and folks of color. And so language is important. You notice that when I introduced who we serve, I said we serve women, non-binary, and transgender students. When the program rolled out before I got here, an email went out to all female identified students that said, welcome, you're part of a women's mentoring group. It did not go well. They sent that to a lot of trans men and a lot of non-binary people who were marked female at birth. So then we transitioned to women, non-binary, transgender students. That didn't go well either because homophobia. And so people were not referring to our program because they thought it was only for queer students because it had the word non-binary, transgender in it. Students didn't want to be involved because they were like, I'm not gay, don't include me in your stuff. And so then we transitioned to we serve all students except cisgender men. And well, that didn't go over. So we're back to serving women, non-binary, and transgender students. And we just, we fight the stereotypes, and here we are. We're doing okay. So we have changed who we serve quite a bit over the years, but we currently serve our scholars who have a minimum of are enrolled in a minimum of 6 credits. So they have to be a degree seeking or a certificate seeking student, and they have to have a minimum 1.75 GPA. That's just because if they are at a 1.75 or below, they're already on probation and working with someone else really intensely to get off probation. So other than that, no requirement for a GPA. They could be a 4.0 student and still be involved. Our ambassadors, our paid mentors, have to have a 3.0 or above. We recognize this is a big job, and we have seen over and over again that students with below a 3.0 can't actually sustain their GPA and do this job because we do a cohort style of mentoring. So each one of my mentors has 20 or more mentees. And then they have to be enrolled in a minimum of 6 credits. They must have also taken at least 6 credits. So they had to have been a student to mentor incoming students. Next slide, please. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about what is it like to have a cohort of paid mentors. So because we pay our mentors, we are able to give them more than one mentee. So we pay them, actually, let me start with how the program's structured. So we have 3 success coaches. Those are full-time staff members who work with all of our, what we call ambassadors, our mentors. They meet with their mentors weekly to talk about how their caseloads are going. Each mentor in our program has 20 scholars or mentees. We changed the language from mentor to mentee because there's too much power in that language. And we wanted to also recognize that mentees can teach mentors, and because there's so much stigma with the word mentor too, especially when serving students of color and communities of color, or communities that have been disenfranchised. And so we got rid of that language because people were like, I don't need a mentor. I'm not some urban kid. Like we faced a lot of that. And so we said, all right, you're an ambassador and you are a scholar. Welcome. You're our newest scholar in our program. And that comes across in a much more positive and powerful way than welcome. You've been admitted into a mentee program. And so we have each one of our mentors serving 20 students, and that means that they're busy and they have a lot to do. And so let me get into a little bit about these bullet points. I recommend not going through HR if you don't have to with your student employees. We don't go through HR with our federal work study students here. We have with our ambassadors thus far because we Corey check them. We do these intensive background checks on them because they might be interacting with a 17-year-old student. We don't know. And so that is really cumbersome. We're currently redoing our program to see if we can get away from that. Pay them enough money so that they want to do the job and that they don't get a second job. That is something that's really important. This is our #1 equity piece for our students, is paying them. We recognize that if they don't get the 15 hours, so they're paid $15 an hour for 15 hours a week, and if they're not getting, say their mentees aren't wanting to meet this week and they've only logged 10 hours, if they don't get consistent payment, they're going to go somewhere where they can get consistent payment. And so that brings us back to how we help them get those 15 hours. We have a place called the Success Center, which is just for our SAMP students. And we tell our students, if you have done all of your mentoring duties this week and you are not to 15 hours, we want you to go sit in the Success Center and do your homework. And we will pay them to do that, because if they are in the Success Center and a new scholar walks in looking for help or looking for friendship or even just looking for some snacks, they have someone in there who is well trained on all of those things. And it makes it look like a popular place when I have 10 mentors hanging out in there over lunch because they're trying to get their hours. And so that has been a huge help for us. And it has really cut down on the amount of our ambassadors getting second jobs, which takes them further and further away from our job. Because unfortunately, they can go get a gas station job paying $17.50, and we're only paying $15 an hour. So that's another thing. We're trying to increase the amount we pay them. And then, so we help them max out those hours. What happens if you lose funding? I'll come back to that. Because I know I only have like 5 to 7 minutes, right, Jess? Okay, yeah, I'm already behind. So let's go on to the next slide, and I'll talk a little bit. Our lovely student. Okay. So I want to talk, before I go on to any of these bullet points, more on the equity piece. So we use who are our ambassadors and who are our scholars. So I've already listed the 5 categories at which all of our students fall within. And still, we recognize that some students come to us, some students with more privilege come to us more than others who have been more disenfranchised. And so we have a recommendation form out there we send around to everyone, every program, every professor on the college. And guess how many students of color we get through that recommendation form? Almost 0. We get only white students being recommended to us because of everyone has an internal bias. And I cannot be running a program full of white mentors and student mentees of color. That doesn't serve anyone. And so it's really important to us that we are using data as an equity tool so that we are monitoring what populations are in our mentee pool. Do we have, how many students with disabilities do we have? How many students on Pell Grant do we have? How many students of color, Hispanic, Latina? And we're making sure that our mentor pool fits that population. So every semester when we go out to recruit, we see what populations do we need to fill first that we don't currently have on our mentor roster. There has not been one term here where we had to actively recruit white students, whether that was white students with disabilities, white students in LGBTQ. We know that those students are naturally coming to us, and they're getting interviews and they're coming to us quick. And so it is my coach's job to reach out to student lists that aren't hearing about us, that aren't coming to us naturally, and say, hey, you qualify for this prestigious opportunity on campus, and we want to help you apply and get there. Another piece where if you're going through the HR system, we are currently revamping it where we get to have an online application that we design for the student and interview with our team first. Then we offer the position to the student, depending on a positive Corey Story check, and then we help them go through the HR process. We were recognizing it took our students sometimes 3 months to get through all of the HR forms before I could write them a contract. And that was really cumbersome. So let's see. There's so much on these slides. I'm just looking at your questions over here too, Jess. What advice would you give to someone who doesn't currently have paid mentors and how to get started? I would start at capacity. Paying your mentors, it helps you build capacity and so fast. Being able to say, I have 25 student leaders that serve 500 students, it not only capitalizes on all of the time of my professional staff to recruit 25 students instead of 500 students for a one-to-one match, it helps everyone use their time to serve all of our students better, and it helps us reach more students. I would just start the campaign of why it's useful. and how you can slowly get there. It doesn't have to be full out hour to hour payment. It could start out with $500 stipends or bookstore stipends, or some sort of paid leadership training. And then you can get up to hopefully getting them fully paid mentorships someday. So I'm gonna stop there because I know I'm already over my time, and I get so passionate about this. So I will just pause.
So appreciate you, Brooke. And we're going to have, if you have something that you'd like to learn more from Brooke or ask them about their experience, please feel free to put a question in the chat. The Q&A we'll keep track of and have about 5 to 10 minutes for that. So really appreciate, Brooke, some of the themes that you shared about a program breathing over time and revisiting language and the importance of understanding what your students' perception of language is and what that weight that carries and what doors that opens or closes on campus. So thank you so much for sharing. And I'm going to introduce Zachary Helsper next. Zach is from, of course, California State Northridge and is going to be talking about their Lead Peer Mentor program, how that's changed over time, some of the learnings, and also some of the conversations they've been having internally about other peer mentoring programs on campus and what's coming in the future. So Zach, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. So yeah, I'm over at Cal State Northridge. We have our Mentor Connect program. That's what we branded it as. So this program started in 2020 during the pandemic. So we had about 5,000 new incoming students that were ready to join our campus by not actually physically coming to campus. And then, so this was also the same time that our Office of Student Success was being founded. So the provost office had this challenge of like, well, we need to welcome these students and make sure they're connected to the campus somehow, some way. And then, so we needed to figure out a mentoring program that we could do at scale. So allowing all first-year students to sign up for a mentor if they wanted. And so we immediately were able to partner with a mentor collective, and we designed really this program to support all of our incoming first-year students, whether they're first-time freshmen or transfers. Next slide. And so what we also did, we immediately built into the program to have student workers within our office help us sort of manage and support this program. So we refer to them as lead peer mentors. They themselves are also mentors within the program, but we often see them as mentors for the mentors as well. And so they work with our Office of Student Success. So again, we're in academic affairs, so it's a unique kind of situation where we're not necessarily the student services side, student affairs, we're more on the faculty side underneath the provost office. But that allows us to actually interact across all the divisions and sort of partner with a lot of different groups on campus. And again, we really wanted to have these lead peer mentors help us build out the program because they are students, they've been through it. This year, we have 4 lead peer mentors. 1 is a graduate student, 2 are transfer students, and 1 came in as a first-time freshman. So we really do have that full range and that student experience. And so we're able to kind of learn a little bit from their experience and translate that into the program. So our current LPMs, they do have mentees. What's also great about having them as student employees, we can kind of dictate, well, here's how many mentees you'll get. Also, since they work so closely with us and we know them so well, if we ever have a chance where a student says, oh, I need a new mentor, I'm having an issue, or someone comes to us and we identify them as needing a mentor, maybe they didn't sign up, we could say, hey, we have this great student working with us right now. We're going to link the 2 of you together. They do partner with us a lot to kind of inform sort of the student experience, what's going on, trends that they're seeing. And then I kind of share with them on the back end some of that data, the priority flags from the prior year to kind of map out everything over the course of the academic year. And then one thing that we're trying to do is having them come up with a week-to-week check-in. So each week they'll have information about, okay, so week 1, let's welcome them. Week 2, let's talk about building a network and getting engaged with campus clubs. Week 3 is making sure that you're enrolled in all your classes and everything is going well. And then they're going to push that information out to the mentors and build resource guides so that the mentors never really have to think about what to do when they want to do a quick check-in. And it's a way for us to sort of encourage mentors to do like a weekly check-in of like, hey, by the way, you know, did you sign up for your second semester advising appointment so you can get new classes? Or, hey, it's midterms, what's going on for you? Next slide, please. So the training that they get right now, we look to hire them in the springtime so that we can get them ready for the summer. We have a summer transition program that we've been building out over the past few years, focused on incoming first-year students that need sort of additional math and writing support. Often these students are also first generation, come from underserved backgrounds and communities. And so we really are serving all first year students, but at the same time, we can actually intentionally build our program to serve different type of communities. We hire them as instructional support assistants. So that allows them to sort of be in classrooms with students, support curriculum. We have a University 100 freshman seminar. We have summer programs that they can work with faculty, lead workshops, support students in that way. Like I mentioned, we have a current graduate student, and we're actually thinking about maybe having 2 graduate students for the coming year because, you know, they have a little bit more experience in terms of supporting students. Our current graduate student is in the counseling program here on campus, and he has actually been working with me on responding and sort of coordinating the response for our priority flags. So it's really great to have someone else that I know that is constantly in that system, checking things out, referring to students, and if things are major, they can come to me. And so we're actually thinking about growing that to have more graduate support, not only for the office, but for this program overall. And then so for the future, again, we started the program in the pandemic. So there was different funds available. Now we're looking for additional funding. And so we secured some grant funding for this year. And so this year, for half of the year, our mentors have actually been paid through a grant. Which is great because that's additional funding that we didn't necessarily have. And we can leverage that funding as a way to partner with other groups on campus that might have a mentor program that maybe they can't hire them until the fall because of their hiring practice. So if we are able to work with them, we'll extend sort of that grant funding to hire their mentor during the summertime so that they can actually, you know, have someone in the summer, but then they can support our program in the summer when we have hundreds of students on campus. And then they can immediately transition into their fall program or whatever it is and still support the mentees that they were assigned during the summer. And then what we're also trying to do is we are only one of a few, if not many, mentoring programs on campus. There's even a CSUN mentor program, which has been branded that. So sometimes students, you know, will think that they're signing up for one program when it's really another. Most of our programs are for a specific demographic of students or, you know, time in their career. So maybe it's first year students or sophomores. So really what we're trying to do is create a peer mentoring community so we all can come together, decide what is happening with our mentorship. You know, whenever we say, oh, sign up for a mentor, what does that mean? What do you get when you get a mentor? What is the mentee experience? And then also, what is the training that the mentors are receiving? Is it inclusive? Is it you know, focused on only a particular part, or can we expand that out to kind of include the overall student experience? And then this will allow us to come together and combine resources in terms of providing training for students. If there's ways for us to kind of share that grant funding, again, it's a way to open up the doors. Like I said, ours unit is within academic affairs, and this will allow us to partner a lot with outside entities as well. And I think that's it.
Wonderful, Zach. Thank you so much for sharing. There's a couple questions for you in the chat, which I'll make sure to flag for the Q&A and keep those questions coming from folks who are here listening in. I'm going to introduce Daisy Moore. Daisy is from California State University, Monterey Bay. Daisy, I was remiss and didn't mention your title before, but you serve as a METIS Student Affairs Generalist, also for the second year experience. And we're so excited, Daisy, for you to talk about Otter Collective, how that's transformed, how your students are helping you on a day-to-day basis manage that program, and all of the other things that you have going on. So thanks for joining us to talk a little bit about Otter Collective.
Yeah, thank you for having me today. So our school mascot is the otter, which is why we've rebranded Mentor Collective to be the Otter Collective. And a little bit of the background behind our program is that we are supported by a Title V DHSI grant called METAS, and that stands for Mentorship and Equity to Achieve Student Success. So this aligns with a peer mentoring program very well. Our campus really needed a robust program to address the folks that the grant specifically is trying to reach out to. That's our low income, Hispanic or Latinx students, and first gen, sorry about that. So we started Otter Collective in 2021 as a way to bring students back to campus in a very engaged way. Originally, the program was offered to first-year students. With the Metas grant, we've been able to expand that into including our transfer students and our second-year students. We, similar to CSUN's program, we title our employees as lead peer mentors, and we offer them a competitive wage. So just like Brooke mentioned with Holyoke, we have found that paying our students a competitive wage has helped keep them on campus and retain those students as well. We have two upper division students that are supporting the second year experience program, which is sponsored by the Metas grant in order to combat the sophomore slump. So that's where my two paid employees are specifically focused on. They each have 150 mentees each. And so we have a very detailed spreadsheet of which group of students they will reach out to this week, and then which group of students they'll reach out to next week, so that they spread their engagement across the 150 mentees in a strategic way. Also, we auto-enrolled all first generation students that did not participate in Otter Collective during their freshman year. So in their first year of attending CSU Monterey Bay, all freshman students, all first year students are invited to join Otter Collective, and they are mentored by volunteer upper division students that can support the first year students. But we wanted to be a little bit more intentional with our second year students. So the two students hired to support this particular group of students that is very high risk because they did not engage in their first year. We really wanted to make sure that they were not slipping through the cracks. So they were auto-enrolled and they've had the option to opt out. And then my students reach out to them very frequently. We've also asked people to join our social media so that not only are they getting the text messages, but they can scroll through their Instagram and get more messaging through that. My students also have a very robust tabling around campus, and that's in the dining services in parking lots to really try to reach our commuter students, and at all campus events. And getting more recruits has been a big part of their tabling. So if you go to the next slide. All right, so the environment is that our students are supported by academic affairs and student affairs. The Metas grant is sort of the bridge between both worlds. So we attend student affairs division meetings as well as academic affairs, and offer our programming and our support across both campuses, which has been very successful in that our campus partners have been very supportive in helping advertise the program. My team has a set of shared spreadsheets with templates of suggested conversation topics and according to timely events on campus. So for our second year students, there's a career fair that we really encourage our students to go to. And so they start to reach out to those students, inviting them to the career fair before that, along with all other campus events and important dates and deadlines. The template also keeps resource links so that that's readily and easily accessible for my students to just tag that and add it into their text message or onto our social media platforms. Having this spreadsheet and these resources readily available for my two mentors has really supported the type of messaging we're sending out. We sort of learned the hard way that if students don't have some training in what to say or how to market, then, you know, they were sending like messages of, hey, how you doing? Or just checking in, hope everything's cool. But they weren't getting a lot of responses. So we found that open-ended questions are really important to get a response, and timely conversation topics were really important. So in creating ease for my students, and the amount of students they're trying to reach out to, having these resources readily available was very practical and convenient. The second year experience program has 4 sort of pillars that we focus on to combat the sophomore slump. So we do a lot of social media posting around financial literacy, inviting students to our workshops, but also offering some advice on budgeting and things like that. We talk a lot about identity and stress management and career development as well. One thing we are planning for in the future is to continue training our students in engagement strategies. Again, like those open-ended questions was a really big learning curve for all of us, as well as like marketing techniques to be really engaged on social media. We also learned that we needed to begin our campaigns much earlier for students in transition. So this spring, we'll start to target our first year students, inviting them to join into the second year mentoring or mentee capacity. They can also be mentors for first year students, and really trying to increase our capacity. Any advice that we have to offer based on our learning curve is that creating those spreadsheets and those templates has been essential to our success, and allows our students to stay very busy. They never have questions of what they should be doing next. Also, all of this conversation and wording has been, the students have been involved in creating it, because I might have one way of saying something, but my students know how to connect with their peers in a much more engaged way. I also would suggest being very careful with the terminology you use in what you call your program. We, of course, branded our students as lead peer mentors, but we're looking to change that terminology, because across campus, peer mentor is a very used term. And so, for example, our transfer students did not want to sign up for Otter Collective because they already had a peer mentor from the transfer center. And the difference is very different in what the transfer students and what Otter Collective students can offer. And it's okay to have more than one peer mentor. So we're working on that. And then, yeah, again, we just really encourage the use of the templates, because that has really eased the conversations and the efficiency of our work. And I'll wrap up there. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Daisy. Well, we'll move into the Q&A portion. Thank you so much to our 3 presenters for putting this content together, sharing your experience and some of the things that you've learned along the way. I'm going to jump into some questions. Zach, I'm going to give you a quick one first, if you don't mind. What was the grant that you referenced that allowed you to start paying your peer mentors? I know that you had mentioned that.
Yeah, so we actually partnered with our Office of the President. They had secured a grant through the Department of Education focused on minority serving institutions. And then so they had put already in their mentoring as one of the sort of action items that they would do to ensure student success. And so they had partnered with us, and they said, well, you know, you're already paying mentors, and mentorship is what we listed as the grant. Like, you know, we can go ahead and put that in there. So it was a great partnership. And then we were allowed to kind of structure the mentoring program to kind of fit within that grant and the minority serving institution the tenets of that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. We also had a participant ask Latoya, this is a great question, and actually a question that we get fairly often at Mentor Collective as folks are thinking about the design of their mentorship program. Daisy, I'll actually refer this one to you if you wouldn't mind. And of course, Brooke and Zach, if you have any opinions on this. How engaged were those students who you had mentioned you had enrolled a body of students automatically in mentorship? And sometimes, you know, people are concerned that that affects engagement. Did you see that at all in your experience with auto-enrolling those students? If so, how did you address that with your lead peer mentors?
Yeah, thanks. That's a really good question. And when we were very curious to see how that panned out, Again, we auto-enrolled first generation students that did not participate in the Mentor Collective program during their first year, which was about 300 students. We've seen about a third of them actively engaged. So about 100 students really actively engaged, which for me is a huge win since they chose not to participate their previous year. About a dozen students opted out. And then we have about 200 students that are sort of minimally engaged, I guess I would say. They're not opting out and they know that is an option. So they're receiving the information, but they're just not engaging with their mentor as much as we would hope. So I think that's also a win because they are staying involved and receiving the information. But again, this was kind of a gamble, right? So that's a really good question, but I've taken it all as a win because about 300 students that are really high risk have stayed engaged, and we've monitored their enrollment, and they've continued to enroll in courses.
Thanks for sharing that, Daisy. Brooke, I also know, thank you for putting in that comment that you are an opt-out model as well. Brooke, anything that you'd add that either reinforces or is a slightly different experience in an opt-out mentoring model?
Yeah, absolutely. So we tell all of our scholars that congratulations, you are our newest scholar in this program, because we are an opt-out model, but we can't actually count them as engaged until we've had what we consider a meaningful engagement or meaningful interaction. And so we tell all 1,200 students that they are accepted into the SAMP program. Congratulations, you're our newest one. We can't wait to meet you, because it reduces barriers to access. And we know with the populations we serve, there are multiple barriers. And with their intersecting identities, it only increases the barriers. And so what we do is we provide them that email and a letter home. We follow up, can't wait to see you at our events. We try and get them registered for Mentor Collective. And then occasionally we have folks say, hey, I don't actually want to be a part of this. We send them our opt-out form. And if they don't ever engage with us, they never show up to an event, never register for Mentor Collective after all of our tries, don't opt out, we don't actually count them. But it is a major piece of reducing barriers and creating equitable programs at our college.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think both of you have said, hey, we've had to think about this differently over the course of time. We saw engagement, and what is also, it sounds like what you're both hearing is that we had the data to understand what that looked like, to question our assumptions, to implement change and reinforce changes that we were making. So thanks so much for sharing that. Sarah asked a great question in the chat, and Zach, I'll probably put this to you first, but I know Brooke and Daisy, we're also going to have definitely strong opinions and thoughts on this. For programs who pay your mentors hourly, what guidance do you give around counting, reporting, verifying hours worked? Because that's obviously something that I know, especially for folks who haven't started doing this yet, they might be thinking about the logistics behind that.
Yeah, so as we started in the pandemic, it's kind of hard to obviously have someone appear in an office. And then as we transitioned back to returning to campus, we did request that the mentors maybe work at least one day a week in the office, and we would try to structure it out so we had a mentor available if we ever need anything or someone comes in. And then so what we do is we have them sort of we use Teams on our campus. So Microsoft Teams, they'll do a kind of a chat, chime in, time out kind of thing. We give them sort of that flexibility in advance. We say, part of the work is meeting with mentees, supporting them, reaching out, doing the emails and whatever it is. And so we say, as much as that you want to structure during the daytime, that's great. But obviously, students are busy, they're in classes all day. So if your mentor or if your mentees are wanting to meet with you outside of those hours, just as long as you're keeping track of that and being open with us of like, oh, I'm going to log these hours at this time because my mentee wants to meet after dinner or whatever, we're okay with that. We also just make sure that we have enough sort of projects to make sure that they're doing sort of the work for the office, whether that's maintaining our social media accounts or like I mentioned, the graduate student doing sort of the priority flags. It's easy enough for us to track. So we make sure that we structure it out that way.
Awesome. Brooke, I know you have some really creative methods around this, so I'm also and I saw you unmute, so I hope it's okay. I'd love to have your perspective here as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an issue and it's not. Because we know that mentoring 20 folks, it happens at odd hours. It happens, the majority of them are logging hours at like 9 p.m. And so we encourage them to get to 15 hours no matter what. But what we really pay attention to is, are they doing their job? Are they logging in Mentor Collective? How many conversations have they had with each scholar or mentee? And if they're not doing their job, then we have an issue. And so they meet with their coaches, our full-time staff, every single week for supervision. And this is part of their professional development in our program. And if the coach flags to me, hey, they're really not connecting with their mentees, I don't have any proof that they're sending text messages or taking anyone to lunch, then we have an issue. And that's where we call the student in. But overall, as kind of a safety net that is more of a facade, we have them send an email every week to their coach saying, this is how I spent my 15 hours. I did 2 hours of texting, 3 hours of email response, and the rest of it I was in the center or I went to lunch, yada, yada. And then because I am the one to ultimately approve hours based off of the union structure, and so I don't see the student, but I have to approve their hours. So if I have a student in question, I can always request their log. And that's kind of our safety net.
Fantastic. Daisy, anything that you'd like to underscore, not to put you on the spot, but absolutely.
No, I'd love to share. Since my students are sponsored by a Title V DHSI grant, I hired students specifically from the population that we're trying to support, and I recruited them from some of our college support programs. And so I sort of put the ownership of the work on the students, of the importance of the work, the social justice that they're doing, and that work towards an equitable education. And so because we put that back into the students' hands, they become very passionate about the work. And it is hard to quantify a lot of the text messaging because they are done at odd hours. They might start a text message or send a message to somebody at 7 p.m. The student responds at 10 the next day, you know, so that is hard to quantify. But again, like Brooke said, we make sure that they're reaching out and doing the things and checking the boxes off in our spreadsheet of conversations we'd like them to have. But they also, you know, do tabling and social media. So there's, I think, more work available to them than hours I'm able to provide them.
Well, we have a couple of last tidbits to share, especially from things that we've learned from the three of you and aggregated together. So thank you again so much to the three of you, to our presenters, to everyone in our community who shares resources. We really appreciate that. We all stand on the shoulders of someone else. So thank you for sharing that. And we'll make sure to obviously send this recording out after. We also wanted to make sure that we shared Georgia Southern's practices around graduate students. Oftentimes we think about graduate students as certainly having more skills, more experience in life, but graduate students also need a variety of support. So Georgia Southern has really focused on 3 or 4 years ago when they started their mentoring program. Chico actually hired graduate students and firstly on a volunteer basis. So they were not paid at first, and they were graduate students to support graduate students. At Georgia Southern, the majority of students are undergraduate students, and their graduate student population is largely online. So they were getting a lot of feedback. They were seeing, of course, students leaving the campus saying they didn't feel engaged, they transferred to another program. And so Chico created this program, had graduate students as volunteer peer mentors to help connect graduate students to one another. Over the course of the past 3 years, they've now hired graduate students. I believe that they have 3 or 4 graduate students who reach out as a graduate student peer mentor. So they are at least a second-year graduate student, and they have a number of first-year graduate students that they connect with. So the great thing and the impactful thing about this program is these graduate students also help Chico run the day-to-day of this program for their own professional development. So they have their graduate students who work as lead peer mentors. They are counseling students. They are higher education professional students. So they are also getting exposed to what is it like to work with a technology company where you implement and sustain the software on campus. They also use the data around sense of belonging, academic self-efficacy. They aggregate, share that data and recommendations to Chico on workshops that they should facilitate in an online program for other graduate students. So not only are they serving as peer mentors, but also they're understanding as professionals, how do you use data to implement recommendations to support students? So this is resulting in a monthly programming series. This is also resulting in them expanding and improving their retention of graduate students and their engagement on campus. So a really wonderful program. On the next slide, you'll see that they have a really well articulated website. If you ever want to take a quick look at it, if you're looking for website inspiration for how do you make sure that it's not just another program on campus, they put the pictures of their peer mentors on their online website so you can see who are the students that I'm being supported by. They also put their professional development resources on their website. So just another way, including Microsoft Teams, that they make all of this information available on graduate students supporting other graduate students. So wonderful program. Want to make sure that we give him a shout out and share that expertise. And I'll leave it over to Annemiek to wrap things up.
Thank you again to our wonderful guests. I want to share, some of the themes that we heard in our interviews before today, but also today around data-driven decision-making, whether that's targeting the right student groups, making sure representatives, student mentors are available to folks, the collaboration and partnerships that we've been hearing about within different units. Love hearing about the branding of these initiatives and that phrasing, I think from Brooke, of you qualify for this prestigious opportunity, whether that's as a mentor or as a mentee. The dependability of the paycheck and the flexibility of how to deliver the employment, right? The way that these students are, honestly, I would say, learning a very important job skill that they will use post hiring with the amount of hybrid or virtual or jobs that are out there now, the ability to be trusted and report up on the outcomes of their employment, but also have the dependability to stay focused on their degrees. We also heard a lot about blending of mentorship responsibilities for student employees with other responsibilities like instructional support, staffing a student center, running student programs, helping with participation. And then finally, some great tidbits about looking for grant money to fund student work study or student employee payments as well. So hopefully you took away some good tips. I'm going to wrap up with a few resources. Mackenzie is also going to share a poll as we exit our time here, but I want to preview some of these resources that you'll see in your follow-up email that remind us that, again, this is more than just a job. This is part of the student's educational experience, and it's important for us to ensure that it adds educational value rather than competes with or distracts, which is obviously, we heard so much of that from our guests today. But I pulled some examples from this best practices for student employment research paper. So if anyone is looking to ground their own recommendations or requests for support at their institution, this is a relatively recent 2019 publication that you can use to support your model. And some of the things that we recommend are being really clear in your selection process. In our follow-up, we will share templates and examples of what it looks like to be well qualified for the mentorship role, being as inclusive, but as specific as possible to ensure that the students you're recruiting are able to do the job effectively, being really upfront about time commitment and expectations. And if you look at these examples we'll share, they talk a lot about the why. I love what Daisy said about our students are really committed to this. They're really engaged and they care a lot about this. And that has a lot to do with the success we're able to achieve. Also ensuring you provide training, obviously as Mentor Collective partners, you know that there are online training modules available to you, both the required mentor training and the optional DE&I Foundations course, and then the discussion guides that you mentors and mentees have access to. But your institution likely has a number of resources available, and this is another place where you can potentially partner with existing events and programs on campus. I am sharing in follow-up with you a wonderful rubric that we have developed that you can use for your coaching and evaluation efforts with paid mentors, which includes the professional skills organized in these 6 NACE competency areas that map up to mentorship, that show just what training from our platform should allow them to achieve, what their and then also what the application of practicing mentorship was. This is a great foundation for something like weekly coaching meetings, or a mid and final student employee evaluation structure. So you'll see that in your inbox as well. And then really incorporating reflection. I think we've heard a lot about this as well, but you can use the Iowa GROW, which is growing, I'm going to forget the acronym, but it's a student employment initiative. How are the students who are performing your student employment roles incorporating that with their classwork. How are they incorporating this into workplace competencies? So some really great reflection questions to use with your students to help them transfer these skills. We also have a great blog post that you can provide to your students that has examples of how they can take their paid mentorship or mentorship coaching positions and put them on their resumes and put them on their LinkedIn profiles for the best outcomes and visibility for them. So just to wrap up on some of what's next here, connect with your student employment office. You certainly want to take, or to connect with one of the folks on the line here if you would like to know more about how they navigated the process of finding or starting a position description, a posting, and so forth. Planning ahead and starting early is really helpful here. Certainly opportunities to do hiring for this type of position in the spring, others to do so in the summer or the fall. And really just try and take advantage of these resources that we will share with you and let your partner success manager know if this is something you want to explore and get more help with, or if this is something you're committed to and want to work through in your plan. With that, I will say thank you so much for attending. And again, to our guests, we really appreciate your time and participation and wish you the absolute best of luck with the next launch of your mentorship programs.